is have a lot of small talk, right? If you go to a party, if you just see somebody, at the store or whatever, you engage in small talk. How's the weather? Wow, it's really hot here, right? Things like that. And so this is the opposite of small talk. It's big talk. It's talking about important things that sometimes can be sensitive, sometimes can be controversial, but these are important conversations that we need to have. And this really started, this idea for the series started over the summer. There were a lot of things going on, obviously, in this country, a lot of civil unrest in our country over the summer. And a group of students in a professor's class, including our moderator, Dee, had a really incredible conversation that had nothing to do with their class. And so we thought, this is a conversation that we need to have and we need to be the leaders on this campus. And so let's just do a whole series. And so we're starting today with race. And we're starting at, because that's where these conversations were about. And we think it's an important one. It's obviously hit our own campus with things tweeted by our vice president, student body vice president. So these are discussions that are happening on this campus, and we want to have in a very open sort of dialogue. And so when we decided that this is what we were going to launch the series with, I emailed Damon Young. If you don't know and read verysmartbrothers.com, you need to get out your phone right now and follow them, like them, however you like to engage people. You need to do it because they are doing incredible stuff. And he founded the website. He's a contributor to places like GQ and Ebony and Slate. And I emailed him first, in part because I thought he would say, no, I can't do it, I'm way too busy. And then I'd have to go on to my next person. But to my surprise, he said, absolutely, I'd love to come do it. And through some magical scheduling, we were able to get him here today. Joining him on stage is Dee. She's one of our interpersonal communication majors in the School of Communication, a mother, a big proponent of love and all that she does, and so she was a perfect person to have on stage. And so what we're going to do is she's prepared a few questions, and she'll ask those to Damon, and they'll talk for a little bit, and then we're going to open it up to the audience. So anybody who has a question, we'll have microphones, and you'll be able to ask those in just a little bit. So without further ado, let me get rid of me and introduce our guest today, Damon. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Megan.
I love love too, so.
Good, I'm glad. We're on the same page about that. Okay. So first, I would like to thank you all for coming. I want to remind us all that this is Big Talk, so we're going to remain respectful and to just be open-minded and be comfortable because we're all here to learn and just share and feed off of each other. Everybody ready to have fun? Yeah? Okay, so I want to start out with a question that really made me interested in reading more of your articles. In an interview you had with Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, you said that Pittsburgh, the residents in Pittsburgh, they aren't intentionally racist, but there's definitely an empathy void. Can you explain, what experiences led to that observation?
Well, the main experience that led to that observation was 37 years of experience of being a black man in America. As you all can see, I am black, and I have been for as long as I can remember. And that right there has just given me almost like a PhD in race and a PhD in white people.
Okay.
Particularly in Pittsburgh area white people. And the quote that I had was an acknowledgement that the understanding, I guess the general understanding of racism and what it means to be racist lacks nuance. Where people think of racism and they think of the Ku Klux Klan, they think of, saying nigger this, nigger that, and doing things that are more overtly and intentionally racist. And, racism is that, but it's also red light. It's also gentrification and displacement. It's also structural inequality, academic
Thank you.
Hey, do I need this? I do? Oh, okay. Sorry. All right, I'm here now.
Okay, so I just want to reiterate. So you're saying that this empathy void, it doesn't just correlate to Pittsburgh and its residences, but to America in general.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, and again, you can't extract the race conversation from any conversation about America, about American culture, about American history, about American present. Like, it's funny. You write these pieces about race, and every once in a while, I'll get some type of feedback through an email or a comment about how come everything has to be about race, and that's like asking an earthling, why does everything have to be about oxygen? Why does everything have to be about gravity? It's like it's there. Like you can't have the conversation about America in any aspect of America without, having some sort of racial context there, because it's inextractable.
Okay, that's a really good outlook, actually. Speaking of not avoiding the conversation about race, in a recent article that you had written about Kaepernick, is it Kaepernick, guys? Yes? Okay.
Yeah.
Kaepernick?
Kaepernick.
The football player, right?
Yeah.
The quarterback.
Uh-huh.
So you basically wrote, Black Americans are Americans. And that just struck me because I'm thinking, why is that a disclaimer that we have to make?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that important that America realizes that the black people here, oh, they're American too? Why is that?
I mean, how much time do we have?
We have a little time. We can talk about it. Speak
So
on
I'll
it.
be here till next Tuesday, answering that question. But to distill it, give like the elevator speech answer.
Okay.
All right, I'll talk about Colin Kaepernick in particular, and how his act has been interpreted by many people as being, disrespectful and showing a lack of patriotism. And all he is doing is attempting to draw attention to America not holding up its end of the bargain. Mm-hmm. He's sitting because people are not standing up for what the flag is supposed to stand for. So his act of protest isn't a hate. It isn't a it isn't like there's not like an antagonistic spirit behind it. It's more of an acknowledgement that, you know what, these things are going on. And I'm in a position where I know if I do this thing, people are going to talk about it. It's going to become a national conversation, even though it's been a national conversation, but now it's continued to be a national conversation. And if anything, his act was actually more patriotic than the people who accuse him of hating the country. Because, as I said in the piece, Black Americans are Americans. And we make up, 20% of the population here? And if you're an American, Black Americans are your countrymen. And if you don't care or don't have any thoughts about how your countrymen are being treated in your own country, then how can you call yourself a patriot? If just 20% of the population, you just give no fucks about how they're regarded or how they're, can I say fuck? Is that, I just said it twice.
You said it.
I said it twice, sorry. All right, well, okay, my fuck cap is off now. I won't say
think
it
we're
anymore.
all adult. Everyone over
my
here
bad.
over the age of 18? You okay? We're okay.
So yeah, I think that with this conversation is happening, the quote unquote patriotism spotlight and the patriotism bona fides of Kaepernick and other people who are supportive of his aim, or the light is kind of shining on him and on us, but the light should be shining on the people who are accusing him of not loving the country. Because again, if you have a problem with what he is saying, which he's saying nothing but facts, then maybe it's you who needs to have your patriotism questioned and have your love of the country and the ideals the country is supposed to stand for questioned instead of him.
Thank you. In another article on the football player, You also said that, and I quote because I thought this was really funny, that there was a sale at the dumb shit store of people saying dumb shit. One of basically saying that.
I like your air
I just
quotes.
want to, not my words. I want to attribute it to the writer. So, end quote. But you said that basically he used his platform brilliantly. Actually, he's in the limelight, and he used that platform to take a stance, a very important stance. But how do we, as students at the University of Houston, or student anywhere at an elementary school, who had, we don't have clout, we don't have that followers, those followers, the fan base. How do we use a platform to speak about issues that affect us, and not just race? We have sex issues, discriminatory issues in any aspect. How do we speak on that?
Okay, just clarify one point real quick. It was dumb ass shit. It wasn't just dumb shit. I just wanted to make that clear.
Not verbatim.
The dumb ass shit store.
Yes.
Was having a sale.
Yes.
That day. And you shouldn't consider yourselves, and I'm speaking to you and whoever's out there, students out there, young people out there, you shouldn't consider yourselves as voiceless just because your status might be a student right now. You might believe yourself to be powerless because, look at what happened at University of Missouri last year. That was a student-led protest. Now, granted, it was a football team, it was a student-led protest that got national attention once the football team decided they weren't going to play, and that's when, everyone's like, okay, we're going to lose a lot of money, so we need to start listening to these people making these demands, and then stuff started happening. But the students started that, and you should never, regardless of your situation or station, consider yourself to be voiceless or powerless, because I feel like this cliche old person up here saying this, but anyone could get on Twitter, anyone could get on social media and start a movement. We've seen that just in the last few years where many of the leaders of the Black Lives Matter movement, the women who started it, obviously in California, but many of the leaders, or the media appointed leaders of BLM are just regular people. People who, had a few followers on Twitter and then started showing up at Ferguson or in Baltimore or wherever, and then just, built on that momentum. So that could be any one of you if you desire to be that. It's just, you just cannot consider yourself to be powerless because you all have the same power. You might not have the same platform I do, but you have the same power. You can say the same things, you can make the same impact. And again, Kaepernick is not a star quarterback anymore. He is a quarterback with a name, but he's a guy that even before all of this was on the cusp of possibly getting cut or traded or something like that. But he, took his platform, and again, he's not Russell Wilson or Tom Brady at this point, or Cam Newton, who is disappointing everyone right now. But he's not at that, like, ever since Cam Newton's fumble, ever since that fumble in the Super Bowl, he didn't jump on it. It's like that ball was like his kryptonite, and now he's just gone completely off the. Anyway, we'll get back to Cam.
Yeah.
Because I could talk more about Cam, but
at the next series.
Point being, everyone has a voice, and it would behoove you to just be cognizant of that and don't minimize the power and the potential of it.
Okay. So speaking on minimizing your power, I don't know if any of you have taken the time yet to read any of Damon's, I was about to say Mr. Young again, Damon's articles. He has like this, quirky, kind of satirical nature of just being honest. And it's not, how do you say, offensive.
It depends.
If you read it right.
Yeah,
if you read it right.
Some people get very offended by some of that. So, but I don't think it's offensive, but some people do.
Yeah.
My threshold is a little bit higher.
But he's speaking on issues that are what we would consider, in small talk, controversial, and so as students, I guess I would like to know what advice would you give to a student who wants to use their voice, who says, I'm not just a student, I want to get out there and make a change? What advice would you give in writing or speaking about such controversial issues?
The best advice that I could give anyone who's writing about anything, really, not even just racial or political issues, is to attempt to be as honest as you can be, and that is very difficult. Like, I still struggle with it. I'm still moving towards, like, I don't know if anyone's ever seen the movie Interstellar, when there was a robot that had like these humor settings and honesty settings, and they didn't put him on 100% honesty. They wanted him at like 60% honesty, because 100% would be just too offensive and too blunt. And so I am working towards 100%, but I'm not there yet. And yeah, because to be completely honest, to be able to say exactly what's up here and get it out here, you have to know exactly what's up here. And so often there's just so much emotion and context and feeling, and it's hard to actually know the exact 100% true reason why you're thinking something, or why you believe something, or why you did something. And so instead of being honest, which I think is an aspiration, I think honesty should be the aspiration. 100% honesty should be the aspiration. Okay. And that doesn't mean that you go out and just start lying and being intentionally dishonest. But that means what it ultimately means is doing the work of self-assessment, and acknowledging your own biases, acknowledging your own issues, acknowledging your own baggage, and assessing that all, and then trying to articulate a message after getting through all of that personal morass that we all have. And I believe that the best literary work is honest work, and it takes a while to get to that point. It's not just about being comfortable, although that's a part of it too, because being honest is also being naked. And maybe you think you want your honest thoughts out there, but maybe you don't want everyone else to know them. So again, for anyone who is aspiring to be a writer, a journalist, a reporter, a columnist, whatever, it's just that would be my biggest piece of advice to you, is to work towards a place of honesty where you can articulate exactly what you want to articulate, and say exactly what you want to say, and know why you're saying it.
So basically, keep it 100 and stay naked.
See?
Right?
Hashtag.
Did you get that? Did you guys get that? I got that.
Yeah, hashtag stay naked.
Stay naked.
There we go.
There you go. If we were looking for that. So right now, we're going to open the floor for students to ask questions to Mr. Young. Sorry, Damon. If you have a mic here in the middle, out in here. You guys can just line up. Feel free. I can talk more. It's fine with me. State your name.
Hello. Excuse me? Sure. Sure.
This is just one of my favorite paragraphs I've ever read, so I'm just so fortunate for the opportunity to just say thank you.
Then yes, you can quote me if you're giving that background. Yes.
This is from the article about Abigail, and for those who have not heard his work, this is you're about to get a treat. Okay, this decision is a major blow to 2002 Chevrolet Cavalier-ass white people who wish to be treated like Maseratis. Of course, there's nothing wrong with being a white person. Hi, white people reading this. Or even being an average white person. Most people, black, white, Kappa, etc., are average people because math. But there is something particularly and specifically American wrong with reflexively assuming that the reason why your second Wednesday in March ass was passed over was because you happen to be a white woman. And then being so hurt by this fabricated wrong that you take your regifted bottle of 3-year-old Almaden Heritage ass to the Supreme Court. Okay, that is just one of my favorite things I have ever read. And this particular convergence of language and sentiment is just something that I will always read you for. You know, it's sometimes no longer than just a few paragraphs. It's just always brightening my day. And the thing that I wonder, I also have to specifically thank you for being as intersectional as you are, which is not something we get from a lot of guys sometimes. I just have to throw that out there. But the thing that I'm wondering is what kind of backlash you get when you write things like that week after week, and where the most surprising bit of criticism has come from in all the time that you've been doing this. And once again, thank you.
Oh no, thank you. That was the first time I've had my work read back to me in front of an audience. So you all can see my face while I'm listening to her read some of the sheer and utter ridiculousness that I do write. Yes, I did call Abigail Fisher a 2002 Chevy Cavalier ass person in a regifted bottle of Arbor Mist. One of those bottles that you take to a game night and no one opens, or someone brings to your game night and then no one opens it, so you take it to the next game night and this bottle's just passed. So anyway, to answer your question, criticism. I don't know. I feel like if you put yourself in a position where you have a platform and you write these things that can be really absurd and ridiculous in regards to race and culture and politics, then you're gonna get criticism. You're gonna get people who don't get it. That's like a whole nother, and some of those people are in my own family. Some of my like uncles and cousins who I'll put something up and they're like, I just, why did you use that language? And so there's that. And there's also the criticism from people who, will look at that language and be offended by it and not, I guess, recognize the humor in the truth, but not recognize the satiric nature of it. And, I have to say it doesn't really bother me, because the positive feedback is so overwhelming, and it's, the positive feedback is working. I mean, yeah, the criticism exists, but the work that I'm doing is allowing VSB's brand to grow. It's allowing me to write for all these other publications that I had always been aspirational for me. And where VSB is actually being acquired right now. We're actually going through an acquisition. And so none of that would be possible if I kind of, I don't know, went into a corner and shut down at the first inkling of any type of criticism. Now, I will say this, and this actually kind of relates to your point about intersectionality. I do also recognize that as a black man doing this, I am a man. And, with being a man, there are certain privileges. And one of those privileges is that I don't get the same level of criticism that black women doing my work do. I don't get the looks-based criticism. I don't get the, some even get like rape threats and harassment and things like that. I mean, I've had like stalkers, but it was, nothing that serious. Just people just sending 1,000 emails a day, but no one who actually ever made like a threat to me. So, I even as a black man, I do acknowledge that even as a black person, I do acknowledge that as a man, there are just certain things that I'm just not going to have to face on the same level. Good friend of mine, Jamila Lemieux, who was senior editor at Ebony up until about last month, where she's now at Interactive One. Some of the stuff that she gets is, like I sit up here and I say that I shrug off the criticism and I just don't care about it. But if people were talking about my daughter or my wife and, put my address out there, then I would probably, well, I won't say that I would stop doing it, but I would be a bit more affected by it. There's also another writer for Ebony Here, Josie, who has received, I've seen receive that type of pushback on social media from some of the pieces that she's done. So, again, it's I know my answer was my answer, but I have to acknowledge that it's an answer that Black women doing the work that I do, for the most part, can't give.
Hey, how you doing? My name is Malcolm Farrell. I just wanted to know, how did you start, as well as what things made you, how can I say, like different magazines really gravitated to you to the point where you were just like, okay, what I'm saying is actually making sense to people and people like to read what I write, as well as what was the foundation of starting Very Smart Brothers for you?
Okay, so I'm tempted to give you like the elevator speech answer, but I'm gonna go back and give you like a real answer to that question. We're gonna be here for a while, so I'm gonna prepare you all for that. So when I was an English major in college, I went to school on a basketball scholarship, and I initially was a secondary ed major, and then I decided I didn't want to teach, and then I just became just a straight English major. But then my first job out of college was teaching, so you know, yeah, shows how very smart I am. But so while I was in college, now this is dating myself, so this is going back to like 2001, 2002. Um, Poetry was like a really big thing. Deaf poetry was like the thing everyone wanted to watch on HBO. Everyone wanted to be Darius Love Hall from Love Jones. And when I say everyone, I mean like Black people. I don't know how white white America was, how they were involved with the spoken word world. But anyone who is 35 and over probably remembers that, and probably remembers a lot of bad poetry too. And I will fess up to contributing some of that really, really bad poetry, with titles like Strawberry Klondike, which, and like every poem would either be about basketball or sex, like one of the two. And you could probably guess what Strawberry Klondike was about. Well, anyway, so there's this background where I'm writing this really bad poetry. And my cousin, um, who, unbeknownst to me, was already a bit of a star on the internet. She goes by Honey Young. Some of you in here might have heard of her. Okay, yeah, some of us definitely have heard of her. And she approached me one day and it's like, Damon, I heard you're writing this terrible poetry. And do you want me to build you a website to house and archive these poems? Because the way I was doing it was I would just email them to myself. That's how I kept the poems. And so I'm like, sure, you could do that. And then she said, well, and also while you have this website, you can do this thing called blogging, and where you just write and people read it, and that's just what happens. So I said, okay. I allowed her to build a site for me. I started blogging. This is in 2003. And then the Black blogosphere was a bit smaller back then. There weren't a whole lot of people out there that were doing that, or at least doing that and had a decent sized following. And through that, I ended up meeting Panama Jackson, who is the co-founder of Very Smart Brothers, and we became friends. And we both continued blogging. As part, blogging on the side, he has a job working in government, and I was teaching, and then I worked at Duquesne University in Pittsburgh. And then after, like in early 2008, we decided to come together and do a group blog, like a blog duo, the Black Voltron of blogs, and call it Very Smart Brothers. And that's how it started. And it initially started as a place for like really tongue-in-cheek conversations about race, about dating and relationships and sex. We were basically like the anti-Steve Harveys. We tried to, well, we tried we try to position ourselves as like the counterpoint to, okay, think like a man, act like a woman, or whatever, eat like a woman, fart like a man, whatever the titles of the books were. And we try to be like this, I don't know, witty, irreverent, tongue-in-cheek counterpoint to that type of advice. And then the site, as the site grew, we eventually segued and evolved into talking about everything: race, pop culture, just general cultural stuff, just things that are going on in our lives. And then it ended up just evolving into what it is now. And I guess an interesting tidbit about us with VSB is that, okay, so just to rewind, Panama Jackson and I met online in 2004. We started Very Smart Brothers in 2008. We didn't meet in person for the first time until 2011. So we had like, oh wow, yeah.
No, right?
So we had this we basically had this brand and this business, and we were friends. Became friends without actually even meeting in person. And this was something that was like, I guess, a part of the VSB allure, and people knew that we were going to meet at this event in 2011, and there was like a lot of anticipation behind it. And after we met, people asked like, so what was it like? Were there like balloons and confetti and like dancers, not like strippers, but just dancers, like interpretive praise dancers around, and maybe strippers too. I don't know. And it was just me and him, just, hey, you know how guys, what's up? What's up? What's good? Let's go get something to eat. And that was it. That was our first, there was no like Meg Ryan, Tom Hanks romantic comedy type of meet cute. It was just two dudes who were not impressed with each other and wanted to go to IHOP.
Cool.
Hey, my name is Dan. I have two questions. First question, how do you feel the media affects racism or like the portrayal of black people in general? And my second question is, do you feel black people are still affected by slavery today?
Okay, I'll answer your second question because that's the easiest. Yes. All right, and the first question, I want to, I guess, I don't know, address a certain point in your question where you asked if media affects racism or affects how black people are perceived. The media is a very large entity. I'm in the media. Anyone here with a Twitter account is in the media. Anyone here with a Facebook page and shares a status that gets liked is technically a part of media. So when people have those questions about how media is affecting things, it ends up painting a broad brush over media when there are many different types of media, and many different types of media have different effects on how things are perceived. You know, Fox News is media, but Fox News doesn't have the same agenda or the same effect as The Root does. And so, again, for you younger, students, journalism students, or whatever out there, it's important to remember that distinction that media, yes, you might be referring to a collective, but within that collective are many different agendas, many different platforms, many different viewpoints, and it's just vital to always remember that again, there's no it's not like there's this one amorphous media monster that is doing things, to people and affecting the way things are perceived. The media is, just as there are maybe 200, 300 people in here, and with 200 or 300 different viewpoints and opinions and histories, media kind of is the same way. So to finally answer your question, as far as how the media affects how black people are perceived, I think it depends on which media you're talking about, because there are some media sources where, we've seen that they tend to have content that doesn't necessarily reflect people of color in the best light.
Same with television. I mean, there are, I know that shows like Empire or Love and Hip Hop or whatever other reality TVs get a bad rap for portraying certain images of black people, but Blackish exists too. There are also a ton of other shows that show black people in a more nuanced and a more, I don't know, quote unquote socially acceptable light. And so yeah, there's so much TV out there and so much content that I just think it's very difficult to blame TV for how people are perceived, how black people are perceived. And again, I know there are people who disagree with me, but I grew up in the '80s when if you watch TV, you would think that black people were like, were basically the top social class in America. Like, you had the Cosby Show, you had A Different World, you had Living Single, you had even shows like Rock. And, but the things that are going on now went on then. So, and I don't, the Cosby Show being on air didn't affect racism. So I just think it's a little dishonest to all of a sudden put blame on a show like a Love and Hip Hop or a Power and blame societal's ills or how black people are perceived on those shows when the opposite has happened and that didn't happen.
Hi, my name's Zach, and
Hey, Zach.
how's it going? I was wondering if the national conversation right now, in your opinion, on police brutality, do you think is going to lead to some kind of policy action to fix that, or if something else needs to happen?
I mean, it already has. There already has been some, it hasn't happened as quickly and as demonstratively as some of us have as I would have liked it for to happen. But there have been some incremental changes, policy-wise, and even in the language that that politicians are using to address. And when I say politicians, I mean everyone except for Donald Trump, because I still don't consider him to be a politician, even though he might be president. But the pushback from activists made Bernie Sanders change his campaign and go out and hire people. It made Hillary Clinton, who still has a lot of work to do. I'll put it that way. But it has made her, I guess, consider different ways of campaigning and different ways of trying to reach black people. So the activism is making a difference. And again, the difference it's not going to happen overnight, because we're talking about centuries of stuff that needs to be addressed and needs to be fixed, and it's not going to happen in a year. It's not going to happen in 2 years. It may not happen in my lifetime, may not happen in anyone here's lifetime, but I am somewhat optimistic in believing that the changes are incremental, but there are positive changes that are beginning to arise from this.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Teresa Dowell Best. I am a filmmaker and a professor who just moved here to Houston 3 days ago. So I'm excited to
Welcome.
see you.
Oh, okay. Welcome.
Thank you. One of the young ladies here mentioned you and intersectionality. And I've been following your work and will agree with what she says, that you strike a really great balance with that. What's your feeling on Nate Parker and the approaching opening of Birth of a Nation?
Oh, wow.
One, and then the second part of that question is, there's a lot of conversation about the vilification of, say, someone like Bill Cosby, Nate Parker, and the fact that people like Woody Allen or Roman Polanski don't get that same treatment or boycotting of their work. Can you kind of tackle both of those, if you don't mind?
Okay, that's a lot to tackle. I'll tackle the first one first, or the second one first. You see that on online and even in conversation where a person like Bill Cosby or R. Kelly or now Nate Parker gets gets justified criticism for their acts, and not just their acts, but their responses to acknowledgement of these acts. And you'll have people say, well, look at Roman Polanski, look at Sean Penn, who I guess was accused of abusing Madonna when they were together, and he's still winning Oscars, and the list goes on. Woody Allen, of people, non-black people who are celebrities and who are still able to have successful careers despite their acts of violence against women. And I don't think that their misstandard should be the standard. Like it makes no sense to judge yourself by someone else's misdeeds. He's like, they did some fucked up shit, so maybe I should be allowed to. And that's just not, I mean, I get it, but that's a very like 4-year-old way of looking at things. Like, okay, he hit me, so I'm gonna hit him, and I should be allowed to hit him because he hit me. And that's just, I don't know. I think that we should hold ourselves to a higher standard. And yeah, and what's the pushback that's happening with Nate Parker and with Bill Cosby and with R. Kelly, that's right. You don't want to make it wrong just to be equal to how how other people have been treated. So again, whenever I see that, that's just a huge, I won't even call it a pet peeve. I hate that shit when people will do that, because it sets such a low standard of behavior and of expectation, and it's actually kind of racist, where you are saying that, you know what, since these white people got away with it, we should hold black people to that lower standard and not expect more of ourselves. So, all right, to your first question about Nate Parker, so the things he was accused of doing, and the thing that his roommate was convicted of doing, these things happened when 17, 18 years ago. And so on one hand, I can understand people who believe that because these things happened when they were in college, that they should be, if not forgiven, but we should be able to move past it and whatever. But rape, and that's one of those things where there's no statute of limitations on how people are allowed to feel about someone who is accused of that type of crime. And he didn't make things any better for himself by his response. And that were completely tone deaf, completely myopic, completely insensitive. And, in which show that even though these things happen, 17, 18 years ago, however long ago, he's still probably the same guy. And again, if you just judge him from those initial responses before his publicist took him in a room and tackled him and made him and force-fed him some words to say, like even that first interview he did, where he brings his daughter, his I think 5 or 6 year old daughter with him, which is totally manipulative. A guy bringing his young daughter, and also you're about to talk about rape and sexual assault, and you're going to have your daughter sitting on your lap while you have this conversation. So again, if someone doesn't want to, I'm not going to lead like a boycott of the movie. But if someone doesn't want to see it, and I personally wasn't planning on seeing it anyway, so again, I think you are perfectly justified to feel that way. And again, I just he has a lot of work to do. But the thing is, when this talk about conspiracy, like there's like some vast conspiracy to bring the black man down or whatever, he already got paid. Like Fox already gave him that money. They're not taking that check back. So, if there was a conspiracy, it would have happened last year. It would have happened before Sundance. it would have happened when the movie was still being produced. Because as anyone who's ever worked in Hollywood or any type of media like that knows, you could stop production you could just make up any reason to stop production of a film. So if there was a conspiracy, they wouldn't have waited this long to attack him. This is his own doing. This is Fox Searchlight not doing the due diligence. There's no like Illuminati out there just lurking.
Attacking.
Yeah, lurking somewhere on Twitter and beneath the chair under there, just waiting to pounce on unsuspecting Nate Parker. Like that boogeyman doesn't exist. Not here. The boogeyman does exist. I mean, I won't say that the experience of being black in America. I mean, there is COINTELPRO. There are other aspects of proven conspiracies to do stuff, but not with Nate Parker, who no one really gave a damn about until this year. Yeah. Sorry if there's any Nate Parker family in here, but I was asked a question and I had to answer it.
He's only my boyfriend.
He's only your boyfriend? I thought you were married.
Okay. My husband knows.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot. I forgot I'm in Texas now. Things are different here.
Your question.
Hi, I'm Melody.
Hey, Melody.
I just wanted to ask, obviously I'm not black and I went to a very white high school. But
No, right?
I'm very, supportive. I have, a lot of black friends that have told me stories personally about certain incidents that have happened to them, and I'm very empathetic to that. So I just wanted to know what you suggest telling small-minded people that have, harassed me online or have cyberbullied me for, I guess, protecting and whatever on my page since, obviously my mom is white, my dad is Hispanic, so my family, have never felt that themselves. So what do you have advice-wise on what I could do within the community just so I'm not stepping on any toes or, doing my thing?
Well, thank you for the question. I think I was with you until the last part when you said stepping on any toes. Did you say, is that what you said? Well, I guess this is the downside of doing this type of work and having these type of conversations. That's inevitable. Like, there's no way to avoid that, and that's just, yeah. It sounds very insensitive me saying this, but that receiving that pushback from friends, from family members, from people who you loved and liked and whose opinions you respect. That's just going to happen, and you have to build up a tolerance for it because it's and I'm not going to say it's not tough. It's not difficult to deal with that and continue to do the work. I guess the best advice would be to gather people who are like-minded, not necessarily to be in the echo chamber, but so that you don't feel isolated, you don't feel alone, so that when you are getting that type of pushback, you're not the only one, or you have someone to talk to about it. You have someone who can relate to it. But I can't give you a strategy on not dealing with it because I don't think that strategy exists, or at least I just haven't. It might, but I haven't seen it.
Thank you for that question. That was a really good question. Last question.
Hi, Damon.
Hello.
I'm Michelle Delvest, and I am also a writer and a blogger, and I am an avid reader of VSB and often find myself doubled over with laughter, and it's just a very entertaining blog. You can tell that you have a lot of passion for what you do. So for myself and even the students here who are looking to have a career in blogging and writing, can you give one key strategy that maybe you employed that took you from passion to it being your your profession and actually making it a business?
I don't know if I could give you one. I could give you like a couple. So before when I was talking about my start writing this terrible spoken word poetry about strawberry Klondikes and basketball, that actually was vital for me, and I didn't realize that at the time. But writing that poetry helped me kind of determine and get used to like an economy of words and making and how to use and be creative with punctuation and even invent words if you have to. Which once you have the fundamentals of language mastered, then you can expand and you can deviate from those because you have those fundamentals. It's just like learning how to play basketball and doing a fancy move, but you're able to do that because you have the fundamentals of dribbling and everything else down. And so that background of with writing that poetry and using metaphor and analogies and all of that has helped me today because with the work that I do, it tends to be satiric, it tends to be absurd. When talking about race, I'm talking about pop culture, and but it took a while. What you're seeing right now, 2016, is over a decade of work, of writing when there were still like 2,000 or 3,000 people reading my blog a day, of still writing, of still producing work, of still writing and reading dozens of times, or writing dozens of times a week, and reading, 50 to 100,000 words a week. And so there's no shortcut. Like, okay, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be in DC doing a similar conversation with a friend of mine. She goes by Awesomely Lovey. She's like some of you might be fans of her. Yeah, and she has a book that's actually getting released next week called I'm Judging You, and she got a book deal, and it's doing like this national tour and all of this. And there are a lot of people who are just now hearing of her for the first time. But Lovey has been working her ass off since like 2004, 2005, since she was in high school, blogging and ending up in comment sections and emailing people and being on social media and just building her brand and building, her base of knowledge and of articulation. And so, again, my answer to any student out there who wants to be a media professional is one, to realize that it's not going to happen overnight. And if you want to do this, then that means that you can't just wait for the spotlight to be on you to all of a sudden turn it on. You have to be doing work. You have to be writing and rewriting and editing and reading when no one is paying attention to you. And in that way, you also, start to build a voice. You start to find out more about yourself. You start to find out what type of writer you want to be. Just in the time that I started VSB, as I mentioned before, we started off as a dating and relationship-centric blog, and it evolved into a place where it's primarily politics, pop culture, race, general culture stuff. And that doesn't happen if I don't have 2,000 bylines in a 3 or 4 year span. And I'm just writing and writing and writing and figuring out, okay, well, this is actually what I really enjoy doing, and I'm good at it, and I have a passion for it. So maybe I don't write about this stuff as much, and I start writing about this other stuff, and I only would have figured that out by putting the work in and writing. And so that's the best way I can answer that question. It didn't feel like it was much of an answer. Just say work hard. But that's it. And work hard and just make sure that that the things that you want to get paid for to do, that you would also do them for free. And the last thing I want to say is that for the students out there and even for the professionals out there. My current occupation is one that did not exist 2 years ago. And for many of you, you might create your job, or you might step into a job that right now, at this point, does not even exist. And that's something also to consider, is that when you're thinking of what type of professional, what type of work you want to do, the type of work you want to do might not be done by anyone else right now. So it's important to at least have that understanding that, with the way that I guess the media landscape is just continuing to shift and evolve, there could be another Facebook, and then everyone has to restructure their entire media strategy and platform around that new, large, amorphous social media platform. There could be a new BuzzFeed that emerges, and you end up starting it, or you end up working for it. And again, that's just my answer. I feel like I'm rambling right now, so I'm just going to stop talking.
Thank you. Okay, so we would like to thank Mr. Damon Young again for speaking at our first Big Talk lecture. I really enjoyed this. I hope you all did too. I hope we can all return and have a good time.